Wafa Al-Abedat. You're listening to the Women Power Podcast, a subsidiary platform to the Women Power Summit, the largest event in MENA, with the aim of empowering women and helping them achieve their absolute highest potential. Each week on the Women Power Podcast, you will hear honest, vulnerable, authentic, real conversations from inspiring women. These women will share their experiences and stories into what it takes to build a successful business and career. The podcast will share insight and inspiration and hopefully inspire action and lead change. Ghizlan Guenez was the founder and chief executive of the Modist, the first global e-commerce platform offering luxury fashion to women who prefer to dress modestly and deemed the net-a-porter of modest clothing. Originally from Algeria, Ghizlan grew up between Beirut and Dubai and later attended the London School of Economics. She spent over 10 years working in private equity, focusing on emerging markets and sustainability. Her work in entrepreneurship, art and sustainability has led to long-standing partnerships with the World Economic Forum, Art Dubai and the Venice Biennale. Ghizlan has built and spearheaded a program responsible for the deployment of over $100 million in sustainability programs across emerging markets. Welcome, Ghizlan. I was going to ask you, how much of your time during the day do you spend on wellness?
I never thought about it that way. I mean, I wake up really early, or I try at least every day to wake up really early so that I can have like 2 hours in the morning that are my time. And I have meditation and journaling. These are two things I have to do every day. And I feel a big difference if I don't do them. Like, I really feel that meditation grounds me so much. And then whilst I'm getting ready, I usually have either a book on Audible or a podcast or something. So you could say that I have 2 hours in the morning and then maybe an hour or an hour and a half during the day. 3.5 hours, 3 hours.
That's amazing. And I can tell, by the way, because I feel like the content you're putting out there now is just really, there's a lot that has to do with taking care of yourself, wellness, giving yourself time in the morning, having a bit of a lie-in, reading. I mean, obviously we're limited generally with, especially if you're worried about COVID, we are spending a lot of time isolated and alone, especially if we're worried about our family. But I can tell that you're putting all that time and energy in investing in yourself, which is very inspiring.
No, I'm saying it's a trick that I learned and I incorporated in my life about 2 years ago, because I used to get up at 8 in the morning, take an hour to get ready, and then you're just running, and things are happening to you. You have no control of your day. And then there was this getting up 2 or 3 hours earlier in the morning that gives you those 2 solid hours of just doing what you want to do. And it's amazing what it does to your mindset when you start not in a rush, but when you start with the right kind of, mindset and pace.
So what time do you wake up every morning?
On average, probably 6. It used to be 5, but now with working from home and all of that, it's 6 o'clock. I don't do that on weekends though. I wake up a little bit later, but 6.
So what time do you go to bed? Do you go to bed at 10 p.m.?
I'm in bed by 10 o'clock. I probably sleep around maybe 11. But it depends. Sometimes like last night I slept really late because I was out. Today I woke up a bit later than usual. So I'm not super fussy about it. If I do it, say 4 or 5 days a week, then I'm really good.
And what meditation app do you use to meditate?
So I don't use an app. I go to YouTube and there are a couple of guided meditations that I like. I have someone in my life, call her a coach, a healer, she's a mix of everything. And she actually was a person who taught me to meditate, because I used to be very fidgety and I never thought it was for me. I tried it a couple of times and I'm like, this doesn't work. It's driving me nuts. And then the meditation is based on, breathing exercise and then a gratitude exercise and then a visualization, which really works for me. I think you need to find what works for you ultimately, because there are different types of meditations.
I agree with you that meditation is a game changer. I've run a company for 12 years. I've always had anxiety and I've always lived with this and just lived with it thinking this was normal. The meditation helps, and if I stop doing it, I can feel that specific day I am irritated, annoyed. So the breathing, sometimes I do 3 minutes a day, but it's just enough for me to kind of get centered. So I worship meditation. In terms of journaling, do you follow like a specific method? What's your strategy or your plan with journaling?
With journaling, I do journaling. All of these things sound like they're high maintenance, but my meditation is 10 minutes and my journaling is 5 minutes. But the impact they have on you are amazing. Journaling, I do. I'll show you, but I have this journal called the Focus Journal, and it actually asks you, the same questions every day. Like, what are you going to do to make you happy? What are you going to do today for fun? What are you going to do today for other people? What are you grateful for? What are you going to be today? You know what I mean? It's almost like, I think journaling is about setting intentions, and you do, and you have similar things in the evening as well. And to me, I think what's most important about journaling is A, setting that intention, as I said, but B, also being deliberate about gratitude. What are you grateful for? That's the highest vibrations. If you want to elevate your energy, that's where you go to do that. So yeah, but there are many journals out there. And honestly, I think there's no one right way. I know a lot of people who journal, and some people just do it on a blank paper and they just write whatever comes to mind. Some people are a bit more structured about it. I like the fact that this journal has already fill in the blank kind of approach. It's easy.
I feel like you look fit now. Like, you can tell a fit girl or woman just looks naturally glowing. Everything is in its place. It's like you're going back to your natural self. Have you always worked out, or did you find that, after the Modist and during this time was a great chance for you to build these habits?
Yeah, so I was a chubby girl when I was in my teens, right? But then from probably the age of 16 or 17, I always kind of was active. So it was basketball team and all that. And I was in and out of gym or some sort of activity throughout my life. But I did let go completely during the Modist when I launched my business. So 2016 to 2019, I don't remember the number of times I went to the gym, but they were very, very little. I did some yoga because I've always been into hot yoga, but everything was looked after in terms of, what work required, what the team required, what I needed mentally and emotionally, but physically I let go. And then this year, actually it was December last year, that I decided that, you feel uncomfortable. It's like you said, it's not about weight. It's around the feeling of comfort, and are you feeling good in your skin and in your body? And I do believe that looking after yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, you can't ignore the physical and just be okay with it. I decided to get back on track, and I've been very disciplined about it, and it's been the most amazing thing. And I actually feel that you can't be in a very good mental frame if physically you're not.
And I think, by the way, women who work out, generally their energy is high. They share that positivity with people, and other people get inspired. So for sure, when I look at your content and you're like sweating and you're at the gym, and then I just feel, you're looking better every single time you post, and you can see the impact. And I think that inspires other women as well. So I'm hats off to you for taking this time to build strong habits. I think it's all energy management. I think we're in the business of energy management.
I believe so much in energy. It's a fact. It's not like you believe or not, but I do believe it, and I feel it, and it affects my interaction with people. Like, I actually sense their energy. And as you said, some people just, are energy drainers, and other people are, exude positive energy. And yeah, but truly, I think that also working out is not just about how you look physically, but the strength and the fitness that you gain. It requires actually a strong mindset for you to be disciplined and to go every single day. So it's another way for you to be strong mentally, to go to the gym and to work out all the time. So it's all interconnected. It's all about, just getting better as a person and doing better for yourself, I think.
So Ghizlan, what was your first job ever? What's the one thing you learned from that first job?
First paid job ever, because I did free jobs before. I worked for free. First paid job ever was actually selling cosmetics. I don't think I've ever shared this before. I was in a beauty store back in the day. I was really young. I was still not even in university. I think I was 17. And it was makeup and perfumes. And I was in sales. So I sold makeup. That was the first job ever. But I started working very young. I started working when I was 16. My stepfather had clothing stores. We used to help him in summer and just man the stores and all of that. And then every summer I would do something, and even during university days. So I had quite a bit of, jobs to kind of just get pocket money or experience or whatever before my first real job, which was in an investment company where I started and then, stayed with them for over a decade, basically.
In that makeup store, you did sales, which is an incredible skill that everyone should have. Because once you know how to sell, you can apply pitching and gaining and getting buy-in and getting trust from the client, customer. You can acquire customers. So you can apply this literally to every aspect of your life. But what is the one thing you learned from being on the makeup, with the makeup brand?
Yeah. Do you know, I hated selling. Like, I hated it. I really didn't like to sell, but I needed the job, right? So I needed to stay. And I figured a trick, okay, which is I've always been into makeup. And I figured if I go, my makeup is amazing, I won't need to sell. Customers will come to me and they'll want what I'm wearing. And that's exactly how I sold. And I sold really, really well because everybody wanted to know what I was wearing and what whatever. I mean, this was when I was 17, so lashes were not on, but your eyeshadow and your lipstick and all of that. And I figured, you know what, if you can wear it, or if people, see it and are convinced, see it on you, or I'm convinced through you, if you buy the product yourself, you can sell it, sometimes without the effort of selling it. So I think that was, I don't know, my trick back then, or my learning, is that if you're a customer of the product that you are selling, then you're very likely going to be able to sell it really well to others.
So it's really crazy that you're bringing up clothing stores and makeup and like lifestyle brands, and then you went to investments, and then we come back to a place that bridges the two. It almost feels like life has prepared you for the Modist and that really critical business in your life. So when you transitioned into corporate world or the world of investments and wealth management, what was that like for you?
Yeah, I think as a person, I'm kind of a good mix of both, some creative, but also some half business, half creative. I'm not entirely creative nor entirely, commercial. I'm a mix of the two. And actually, no, my experience was not soul draining at all. It was an incredible experience. I stayed in the same company for over 13 years. And the reason it was incredible is that I was fortunate to have joined a company that started, I was probably the fourth employee when I joined, and when I left, it was the largest investment business outside Europe and America. So you can imagine within the 13 years that I was there, the exponential growth that it had gone through. And I was part of that growth. And so no year was similar. And every year there was a change in my role, and there was, an increase in the responsibilities. And, I was surrounded by people who were, just A-class in terms of their talent and in terms of their drive and careers. And so there was this innate competition, not at least from my end, it wasn't the type of competition where, you feel stressed out about it, but it's like I'm surrounded by people who are incredible in terms of the mind and experience, and that's bound to drive you to want to do more and want to be more. And so, no, it was it in terms of this subject matter, in terms of investment, was it my dream? No, because I don't find investments to be a very exciting field to be in, albeit I was in the brand building and the stakeholder engagement side of things. So I was doing very interesting things. And towards the last few years of my job there, I was also doing social investing, which was, philanthropy, but actually in a sustainable way. It was very exciting in the context of the industry that I was in. But I think it was extremely hard. It was military hard. There was a culture that was not forgiving in terms of the amount of effort you put in, so nothing came easily. But in terms of reward, it was just an incredible experience. And it was a type of experience where being out of that place after 13 years and being able to survive it and working with the people I worked with, I knew, I could land anywhere and be okay because the discipline was there.
So it seems to me like you joined almost a startup and then it scaled up into this organization. So what an incredible education for you to learn how to run a company, how to manage a company, how to hire, how to fire. What did you learn about yourself in this time? What were your strengths and weaknesses?
I never thought about that, but I think in terms of strengths, I mean, when I joined that business, I was very young. I was fresh out of university and I was very eager to do well career-wise. And so there was an element of flexibility and going over and above anything that would land on my desk. So I see a lot of kids today who, it's not a sense of entitlement, but they're quite like clear about what they want to do and not want to do. And in a way that's good, but also there's something to be said about being flexible and going the extra mile and doing everything and, making coffee and doing an important, task, but also at the same time doing, excuse my French, crap tasks, you know what I mean? And what that did is that first of all, I was known to be really good at what I did, but at the same time, a lot of teams wanted to work with me and a lot of people wanted to work with me. And so I think I had the flexibility and I had the drive, but also there was sacrifice there. I don't think that things come very easily in life. I think there's a combination of discipline and hard work and an element of luck, a very, very small element of luck that I think everybody gets, but it depends whether you take the opportunity or whether you don't. And that opportunity, you've got to supplement it with all the hard work and all of that. But it required a lot of sacrifice, of social life, of personal life, of time with family, of just being totally focused on the career. Things I wasn't good at. I don't know. I think if I'm not very passionate about something, I can get quite bored. The fortunate thing is that my role continued to change. That's the only reason I could be with that company for that long.
Wow. I love the part about entitlement. I totally agree with you. I think our generation grew up in a way that really embraced what is work-life balance versus this generation now. And it's in their graduate job, they're work-life balance is essential for them. Do you know what I mean?
I don't understand that. I don't understand. You know what? Look, if from day one of graduating from university, you want work-life balance, that's okay. But then I suppose you're not looking for a crazy career because I don't see how you can do both. Or maybe there's a way, in which case somebody tell me and teach me, But I know that at every point in your life, your balance is going to be erring towards one side of your life more than another. If you've just given birth, you're likely to be focusing your energy more on your child. And then there's going to be another period where it's more on your career. And then another period maybe where it's more on your personal life. But I don't think that you can maintain a 50-50 balance across your life of career and relaxation. And I also believe that, when I launched the Modist was everything to me. It was my entire focus. I was not complaining about work-life balance because that was my priority and it was what was driving me and it was a very exciting thing. So spending 15, 16 hours doing nothing but the Modist during the day was barely, draining. It was fun and it was exciting. So I think that, it's all contextual and it's all, it depends on your perspective, the work-life balance.
I feel like the corporate and financial industry specifically is quite male dominated. Did you feel that you were always the minority in meetings or in the space that you were in? Or do you feel like actually there were a lot of women?
No, we were definitely minority. It was a growing company and it had reached, I think, 300 employees at one point, and the minority was women. It was very reflective of the financial industry. There was nothing different despite efforts. But I don't think I've ever felt inequality as such. Yes, we were minority. There weren't many women. But I think it's also the fact that I don't want to say that doesn't exist, and I've seen it happen in organizations and all of that. But I also have always found myself to be someone who is quite focused on, if something goes wrong and happens, I don't normally directly default to, I'm a woman, this is why it's happening. It's a problem, it's happening to me because I work in this business. So, unless of course it's harassment or something like that. But yeah, no, in that we were minority, but I didn't feel there was inequality. Other than obviously the ratio of men to women. Yeah.
So you said in the very beginning that, you were very eager when you started. I still feel I'm eager today in everything that I do. I'm very excited and I'm very passionate. Yeah. And I think as women, we tap into emotions as well. And we're comfortable using that in work. In your work, and you've done this for more than a decade. Has anybody ever interpreted your eagerness or excited about work or as something more than that? And how have you dealt with it?
I'm a very enthusiastic person and I'm a passionate person. And I will do that if I'm having a delicious burger or if I'm pitching the Modist to an investor. It's just the nature of who I am. And as I grow and evolve and, try to every day create a better version of myself, I've also learned not to apologize for the person that I am. So if somebody is, is misinterpreting my excitement or enthusiasm, that's on them, and it really is their problem, not mine. I think that especially when you're a founder, there is just no way that you're not enthusiastic about what it is that you do, that you're not passionate about what it is that you do. I mean, if anything, I think investors and the team you create and people around you, that's one of the first things that they notice in founders, is that they're passionate. If you're not passionate and enthusiastic, you wouldn't do it, because it's crazy. The odds are against you. It's extremely hard. You're underpaid compared to any corporate job, and it just doesn't make rational sense unless and until it pays off. Then the payoff is really, strong. So to be honest, without sounding a little bit cocky about it, I don't care if somebody thinks I'm too enthusiastic about my idea or about, what it is that I do. And I think that in general, look, if you're not delusional, and if you've got an idea, but it's backed with numbers and commerciality and understanding your opportunity and being holistic and understanding really what it is that you're doing, but it's peppered with enthusiasm and passion, then to be honest, there's nothing better than that. If you're talking to someone who doesn't appreciate it, you should be probably talking to someone else.
You said there was a part of you that's like, if someone does misinterpret, they're going to see a different side of me. What is that different side of you?
We all have different sides to personalities, right? I think that my initial, probably people's perception of me, and people who know me know that I'm an extremely kind person. I'm very pleasant and friendly. I'm a generous person, and I'm a loving and giving person. However, like all of us or many of us, once someone disrespects you or once someone pushes a boundary, then of course you're going, we've learned to kind of also stand for ourselves and to put someone in their place. And I am someone who can't tolerate rude people, disrespectful people. And so I have absolutely no reservations to put them in their place. So that's it. I'm not, it's not about being rude or obnoxious, but it's about probably, like, you can be kind and sweet and all of that, but you can also be very clear on what's okay and what's not okay.
Actually creating the channel or creating an opportunity to have hard discussions or ask hard questions. Where did that skill come from? Was this something that you developed at work, or have you always been the type of person that could or was able to do that?
No, I wasn't. It's a skill that I had to learn. It's a skill that it's an exercise. I had to try it over and over. I didn't like confrontations. And I think many of us, especially women, actually, and even some men in certain situations, don't like confrontations. Anyway, confrontations are not easy. It's not easy to say the hard thing to people in many situations. So it's actually something that I really needed to develop. And I learned, there's a book called Radical Candor. And I can't remember now the name of the author, but it's one of the best books that I have read around how you can confront people in a way that tells them precisely what it is that you are communicating without it becoming personal or emotional. But it's so important. And when you run a business, there's just no way around being able to have these hard conversations, whether it is telling someone they're not doing a good job or telling someone they're doing a good job but you don't have a space for them, or whatever it is. There are very difficult conversations and scenarios, and it's your job to manage those.
When did that moment when the Modist concept came to you? I know the idea, and I'm sure everybody who's listening will understand what the Modist is, but the moment where you're like, I am now shifting my whole life trajectory, getting out of this work that I'm in, and I'm gonna start building a business.
Yeah. So there's been really a momentum building around this idea, which started with really a joke in the family. I mean, in my family, I have quite a few women who wear the head cover, the hijab. My mother is muhajjaba, so I've seen that. That story of trying to shop and not finding what works for you and being frustrated and so on. I myself am a modest dresser. dresser. I mean, I'm not as strict as, someone who wears the hijab, but I also, I don't necessarily wear strapless or short dresses and so on. So I have parameters within which I shop. So I'm very privy to the experience of that woman in particular. And whilst there was a momentum from like the initial just thought and, like in a fun way talking about it all the way to building a business plan, there was a moment I remember when my mom and I were shopping together. We were out and we went into this large fitting room and we were trying things out. And I remember I tried a few things really quickly, really liked them. Okay, moving on. And she was just going, no, but I have to wear a turtleneck under this. And no, I have to, this is transparent around the arm. And, I can see my ankle. And literally it was, I was just staring at her thinking, your shopping experience is a disaster. Like everything you picked up is not for you. And towards the end of it, she was like disheartened, as in like not openly, but you could tell that. It really showed me a picture of the experience of this woman. Not only is she not finding things easily, not only is she not excited and enjoying the shopping experience, but she's actually at one point feeling alienated by the fashion, call it retail industry, and obviously that was the point where I thought, what, I know that there are millions of women just like her who deserve a better experience. And then from there was the feasibility studies and understanding the market opportunity and all of that stuff.
I want to focus on the technical aspect or some of the skills that you needed, especially in this period. So you got the idea, you're with your mom, aha moment. So let's say you did some research and you were talking to some of your friends about it. When did you start building your pitch deck and your business plan?
The pitch deck came a little bit later because my initial money came from family and friends. So I knew I didn't need anything very elaborate around the pitch deck. So what I did was, first of all, I would advise anyone who wants to start a business, unless you're a serial entrepreneur and you're incredible and you've got all the knowledge that you have, get yourself some good mentors. Honestly, it's one of the best things that I have had, whether it's at the start or at the end, just having a couple of mentors who have done it, who can see it objectively when you're so immersed in it, who have experiences in various aspects of a business, whether it's legal or operational, whatever that may be. I mean, that's incredible. And you'd be surprised how many people will be up for mentoring you. And I've been fortunate to have some incredible mentors who have always been there and supported me. So there was a lot of guidance along the way. What I did actually at the beginning was I spent around 5 months traveling. I went to Saudi, to the UK, to the US, to Turkey. I think I've flown to probably 8 or 9, if not more, countries, including different cities within one country. And what I was trying to do is actually connect with the customers there and understand, is that shopping experience frustrating across the board? Are there different types of modest dressers just as I imagined? What are they looking for? What are they not finding right now? What are the brands they're, excited about? Where do they shop? And truly connecting and understanding what it is that they're looking for in order to, that was the blueprint to create a business for them. That was at the outset. And then at the same time, I was doing a lot of research on market opportunity and, research, whether it's on Google, whether you reach out to consulting firms to send you, some material. You'd be surprised. Sometimes you reach out to McKinsey or to Bain & Company and you just ask them for random research pieces for things you're looking for, and you'd get that. So again, a second advice is, other than mentors, is reach out to people and ask for help, ask for material, ask for, a template for a business plan. So that was another thing. And then I started working with an analyst to put together a business model. So actually thinking about numbers. What would it cost to build a business like this? How do I want to build it? Do I want to build a large business, or do I want to build a very small business on a tiny little budget and see it maybe scale over a much longer period of time? And that, when you start putting these numbers together and imagining what your revenue would be like and when you would break even and all of those, the steps that you would do naturally when you set up a business, you start then making strategic decisions as to how much do I need to raise in terms of funds, and what do I need in terms of a team in order to be able to deliver this story and this business, and so on and so forth. So there are building blocks in terms of starting a business. And I know a lot of people who probably are listening to us right now may feel overwhelmed by what I'm saying, but trust me, when I was doing it 4 or 5 years ago, I didn't know a fraction of what I know now. So you have to imagine that what it feels like and how it felt like for me and for many people who start businesses for the first time is that there's like a massive mountain and you're this tiny, tiny, tiny little human, and you're like just, getting on it step by step, and you just accumulating as much knowledge and as much help as you can. But it always feels like you don't know much and you don't know where to start, and it's all overwhelming.
And I think what's amazing is it somehow comes together. Like you do things in parallel, but it somehow converges. So amazing story. Wow. I've never heard of anybody who did market research by flying to 9 to 10 different countries. Did you get initial seed funds to be able to invest and dabble into those spaces?
No, it was self-funded. But I think it's important for people to know that when I started the business, I had been working for about 16 years. 15 or 16 years prior to that. So I was someone who had, done quite a bit in terms of, working and saving and knowing that at some point I would start a business and investing and so on. I know that it's not, you don't have to do it my way. There are many ways to kind of slice the pie or the cake or whatever it is that the saying is. But to me, it was a sabbatical, and it was very important for me to connect with the customer. Someone could do it by just maybe Zoom calls or research or whatever that may be, but it was self-funded at that point, yeah.
We at O'Brien Hill have over a decade's worth of experience working with some of the world's most successful brands across F&B, retail, culture, and hospitality. We are equally at home helping a brand define its point of view, positioning a new development, designing product, packaging, or creating content that speaks to an audience. Whatever the challenge, we deliver sharp, intelligent, content-driven work that helps brands amplify their message to customers around the world. Contact us on www.obrionhill.com or DMing us on Instagram for your public relations, social media, and branding needs. You just said that you've always known you wanted to be an entrepreneur. Was that something that happened to you while you were at work? Like one day, like this is my cutoff date, or did that just happen organically?
No, it happened organically, and it only happened, I didn't always know. In fact, if you had told me that I would start and run a business in the early years of my career, I would have laughed in your face, because it didn't even occur to me. The idea came before the thinking of I'm going to do my own thing. So it was actually the idea that made me go down that path. And it was towards the last few years of being in corporate world. I just felt that I had kind of, done everything that I could do within the space that I was in, and that, there was something else, challenge, something that, would add more value to me and to what I was doing.
Was that a friend of yours, or was that somebody at work that said, you know what? Because I know when you start, you get people to help you. Like you use all your network. Yeah. You're like, who do I know that I can take out for a dinner or coffee, who will sit with me and help me with my plan or help write copy for me. So that essential person, that catalyst, somebody to actually do your projections for you, was that somebody you outsourced?
So it was someone I knew and I worked with, but they were very junior, but they were really good at what they did. So it's not something that cost a lot at all. And it was, a couple of weeks of work, because it takes just a couple of days to put a model together, but the iteration, is what takes time. And it wasn't costly at all, because the thinking is yours, right? This person who's just technically skilled to build models and put it all together, take your thinking and just put it into that model. So no, it was a junior analyst who was quite good at what they did, who I knew, but I paid them, but it was negligible in terms of in the grand scheme of things.
So my question to you is, if you could give us one tip about pitching, just from a skills perspective, what did you feel you did right when you pitched?
I'm happy to talk about this. I'm speaking to quite a few founders these days, and many of them are actually fundraising. And it's, one of the things that I always tell them, especially those who are fundraising for the first time, is that for you to get one investor, you need to pitch to probably 50. And that's not a bad ratio. I really lost count, but it has to be more than 200. People think that, you get great investors and you've just gone out there and like suddenly everybody, no, because you can't be everybody's cup of tea. Every investor has a certain mandate. Every investor has different ticket sizes. Every investor has different appetites. A good piece of advice is, instead of pitching to every single investor under the sun who comes across your path, try and find investors who act and understand their mandate. Do they invest in fashion? Do they never invest in fashion? What's their ticket size? Do they only invest $10 million minimum and you're asking for $500,000? Don't waste your time, because the truth is every investor is likely to take your meeting, because investors' roles, maybe not the senior ones, but the analyst, will always want to know what's out there in the market, even if it doesn't align with their mandate. So you land up wasting so much time, energy, and hopeful about, the pitches, when if you just do a little bit of homework, you'll know that there's no fit, right? So I think this is an advice that I give a lot of people, and also the fact that it's absolutely normal that you're pitching to a lot of people in order for you to get, a couple of investors on board. So in terms of, what works, I think that it's important that you have an exciting business. Investors are overloaded by startups and by ideas, and there's so much of the same out there. And that's why I always say, if you're doing a startup, don't just think about what it is that you're offering that is different. Are you solving a new problem? Are you solving a problem in a different way? Are you offering a really unique product? Do you have an exciting, what is your USP? What is your unique selling point? And that would be important for investors. And then, of course, you have to have your numbers. You have to know what you're talking about in terms of commercially. How are you doing now? How are your numbers? Where are you trying to achieve? And then thirdly, which I've seen in most of investors that I've pitched to, and goes back to what we were talking about, is they're actually very keen on seeing how passionate a founder is about their business. How connected they are, like why are they doing what they do, the values behind their business and so on. So it's really kind of a holistic piece that comes together. But ultimately, investors want an interesting idea that's commercially viable, and they want to see it, to see the attraction there.
In my mind, you met like a couple, and I don't know why that was my impression.
Because we had many rounds of fundraising, right? This was a high growth business, so every year we would fundraise. So 4 years of talking to people, and 4 years of courting, same investors, sometimes over a number of years. And people, and if you speak to any founder, I think in general you will find they pitch to quite a few investors for them to find, but you always kind of have your eyes on certain particular investors that you really want in your world, because they add value beyond the financial aspect.
What was your worst experience with an investor, without mentioning any names, but what was like, this was a disaster? Wrong person, I was late, I spilled coffee on myself. Which one? The presentation didn't work. Do you recall like a specific horror story?
There are so many funny stories, because sometimes investors actually don't understand your world or your industry. And so they start asking questions that are completely irrelevant to your industry. But sometimes when you're a young and unexperienced entrepreneur, you kind of just think like, oh my God, I don't know the answer to that. But really, they don't know what they're talking about. But that's not the story. There were times when we went in and like people didn't even get it. Like, why would you even have, what do you mean you need to cater to a woman who wears the cover or head cover, or who dresses modestly in general? But that was minority. The majority of people really got it. Probably the worst, and not in a funny way, is pitching to an investor who then kind of, and it's not something I came across often. It probably happened once or twice, but where you get harassed, and it's an unfortunate thing, but it still happens. And that's the reality. That's what we're trying to use, with everything that we talk about and we hear about, we're trying to overcome.
That's what we have to live with, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, we don't have to live with it. I mean, I'd rather not have the money and not have a stakeholder like that in a business, to be honest, but it does exist. I think I would have to say something, which I hope, investors from the region or some investors from the region listen to your podcast. But what I've noticed is that investors from our region have an issue saying no. And what tends to happen is that they get excited about your story, but maybe it's a misfit for one reason or the other. And then it just drags. And then they want to have another call. And then the decision drags. And what happens is that this is a founder who has a certain runway. Like, you've got certain months to live before you need your next chunk of money to come in. And this investor just feels that, I think culturally, they feel that it's heavy to say no. And what I think every founder I spoke to, and myself included, wants to say is, please tell us no as early as possible. It is the best thing that we can hear as founders to just move on. There's nothing worse than just keeping that, response lingering for no reason. And it's something that I culturally kind of saw and experienced in our part of the world. I don't know if it exists elsewhere in the East. I certainly haven't seen it in Europe and the US, where like within a 2-week frame, people come back to you and say yes or no.
When you go and present, do you go with a team or do you go by yourself? So it's much more of an intimate conversation, or do you go with, you bring your CFO or your COO or maybe another investor to support you?
It really depends on the investor. It depends on the interaction. A lot of times on the first meeting, they just want to speak to the founder. If you have a co-founder, it's probably you and the co-founder, and they just want to have an initial conversation to just get a sense. And then if there is interest at the outset in the story and in the business, then they would, do a follow-on meeting, and then you could bring whoever you think is relevant. As what we call due diligence, and those conversations evolve, you involve more and more people into the conversation because it starts getting deeper into the business.
Have you ever felt intimidated when you met an investor?
Yes, I did. So I was saying my first ever pitch that I did was in New York to one of the founders of one of the largest investment companies in the US. He was a big personality. He was very known, and he'd heard from one of his associates about the story, and he was very interested, and he decided that he was going to meet me. So that to me was a terrifying meeting because it was, I knew who the person was, who the character was. He was quite nice, to be honest, and very, very encouraging. But it was also one of the first pitches I did, and the business was still very, very new. We had just launched. But you know what? It's like so many other things. It's like public speaking. You do it the first time and you are nervous and you are not certain, and you kind of, criticize yourself once you're done, and I should have done this and that. But the more that you do it, the more it becomes, far easier. You're on top of your numbers and your story, and it becomes kind of, a very natural thing.
Why do you think so few women from this part of the world don't raise? I think ينعدون على الأصابع the amount of women that have, from this part of the world, that have gone out to seek investment and have gotten to multiple rounds or have raised in the millions. And I think also, Ghizlan, that makes you really special in a way because you've broken a ceiling. And I don't want you to underestimate how powerful that is, because I feel like you've broken a boundary. There are very few women. As you go up in any industry, there's few and few women, but also to raise funds, which is to put yourself out there over and over again, ask people for money. These are all things that don't comfortably to our gender. Asking for what we want, understanding both the finance and the business modeling, and have creative. So you have an interesting mix, but why do you feel there are very few women up there with you?
I want to talk about a couple of things that you mentioned. I think, first of all, this is not something that is only applicable to our region. This is across the board and in the entire world. I don't know the statistics, and I don't just want to throw a number, but I feel that in the US, from out of venture capital money, probably women don't get more than 5% or 7%. I can't remember the number, but I had it a few years ago in my head. But it is a tiny fraction of VC money that goes to women. So it applies, and it applies to everyone, but it's also the entire funnel. I mean, startups also. How many female founders versus, male founders in businesses and in startups in general? So this is just, a more global kind of reality versus our region. I think the other thing that I want to say, which is interesting, and I do believe a lot of women, probably more than men, but a lot of women think that way, and they shouldn't. That's why I want to flag it, is, going out there and asking asking for money. When you're pitching to an investor, you have to understand and be in that mental space that you're not asking them for a favor. Your company is an opportunity for them. The investor who's going to invest in your business is doing so not because they're doing you a favor, because they see an opportunity to make financial returns. And that's why they put money. And so when you go there, never go with the mindset of, oh, I'm there to ask them for money. No, I'm there to share a great opportunity with them. And if there is alignment, then they will invest in my business and I will work hard and I'll make it a success and they're going to have returns out of it. So I think that mindset is so important because then it puts you in a position of power as opposed to I'm going out there, because naturally that act, especially when you need money in your business, is one that is, you're not feeling very strong all the time. Sometimes you feel like, oh, I just need this money. But the reality is that if you have an interesting business, then you're offering an opportunity. So it's important to keep that mindset.
How many rounds of funds did you achieve, and what was the difference between all of them? And was one harder than the other?
We did our seed funding, which is, at the outset to launch the business. And then we had a Series A, and then we had a convertible. So we had 3 rounds of funding. And they're all different because you're raising money at different stages and you're dealing with different types of investors. Investors at a very early stage don't necessarily require as much detailed, in-depth information as, investors who are coming in year 3, when the business is more mature. Investors at that early stage, their ticket sizes are smaller. They probably don't want to be very involved with the business. They're more hands-off. They're angel investors versus, let's say, VCs or private equity investors. So they're very different. It doesn't get easier because also it certainly doesn't get easier. It's harder as you grow as a business because the investors you're dealing with become more sophisticated and require so much in order to invest in you, whether it's the due diligence or whether it's, the amount of engagement that goes into it. But what happens is also you've got much more experience when you hit those, rounds of fundraising. So that, you understand investor mentality more, you have expectations and know what it is that they require. So it kind of, that journey grooms you into being able to graduate into, more sophisticated, bigger investors as you go along.
I feel like as a founder, you can never show your team your panic if you're stuck raising funds because you have the captain of the ship. You always have to be like, we're good, guys. Everything is fine, because you can't be having a meltdown. But I know that it's hard when you're raising funds because if you don't meet certain deadlines, you're unable to sustain your business. Was it hard for you to keep a poker face on, or did you feel like, no, I was very honest with my team about runway and timing and what we have available to survive? It's very tough. I don't even know what the right answer is. I'm just curious to see what your experience was.
Yeah, I don't know. Look, the way it happened with me is that I do believe in communication with the team. And I believe that it's important for the team to understand the journey. It doesn't mean that every single day I walk in, I give them an update on what happened the day before, but every month there's, like a gathering or a town hall or something, and you just tell them what the journey is and what's been happening and, give them a sense because, the support of your team when they're aware of what's happening is also very relevant. And there is a balance as to, what it is that you share. So you give them a good understanding of the journey of the business without making a team panic. And I think it boils down to their trust in you and, your ability to kind of, move things. But I do believe that you can't be, pulling, as you said, a poker face and going into an office pretending that the business is something that it isn't. There needs to be some sort of transparency, always with optimism and with clarity that, we're doing the work. I also think that, as a founder, you have to be resilient and you have to be a problem solver, and you can't be panicking. It's hard, but it's part of the job.
You grew very quickly, very fast. You had a very diverse team in 2 different countries. Did you have imposter syndrome? Are these people really working for me? Are they listening to what I have to say? I know that happens to everyone at different stages in their career, but especially for somebody who went from 1 staff member to, from your first hire to 60 people, Did you ever feel you were legit, or did you have days where you felt like, I have no idea what I'm doing, I'm just trying my best?
I think I dealt with imposter syndrome far before. That's the good thing about like working for such a long time before you start a business. You kind of, go through all the issues well in advance. But there were moments where you just think to yourself, like, is this luck? I mean, there must be some luck in that. You know what I'm saying? But I think it's so important that there is some sort of a growth journey mentally and emotionally and intellectually for the person, especially if you're starting your own business, so that you come across all of these potential, issues that you would face and you understand how to deal with them. Because it's very easy to kind of get stuck with that imposter syndrome and think that everything is luck and that I'm going to be found out and I don't understand anything and someone else is responsible for all this. And it's disempowering. There's nothing more empowering and exciting than to know that this is something that's done collaboratively with your guidance and leadership, but together with an amazing team. So I was very aware of imposter syndrome. So I knew that whenever it kind of dawned on me, I would know how to deal with it. I would know how to push back. But a lot of women suffer from it and need to kind of just be aware of it.
What do you feel you could have done differently with the Modist in 3 years? Do you have any learnings from your experience?
Yeah, if there's the biggest thing that you come out of when you fail at something, and I use the word fail deliberately because I think people need to have less stigma around using the word fail, because every single person fails in life. That's how you grow and that's how you succeed. But the biggest thing that you get out of failing is the learnings. That's the biggest value. And of course, there's a whole list of what I could have done differently, but also what I've done or we have done very, very well. I'm not going to be very specific, but some things are probably on the business side of things where certain things could have been done a little earlier, certain things could have been different. But I think that in some areas, I could have followed my intuition a little bit more. And I know it feels a little bit very la and kind of, up there. But truly, I'm a very intuitive person. And I used to not follow my intuition until recently. But there were times when I knew that I should have acted a certain way. And I should have just followed my intuition, and it could have had a different impact on certain decisions and certain things that I have done. So that to me is probably one of the big, the big learnings for me personally. It could be different for other people. That's probably what I would say. But there are plenty of learnings, to be honest.
It's so crazy you say that. When I started my business, following purely intuition and gut and inside voice. I think what's crazy is at some point or another, we work with experts. And what happens is people start to influence our decision. And maybe I should listen to other people because I'm in a new space and I'm growing. And then what happens is, at least in my experience, I put my intuition in a box and I closed the door and I was like, I'm going to start working with, and it's not to say you shouldn't outsource your solutions and work collaboratively with your team, but it's very different than listening to people who have not been through what you've been through to get to where you have gotten. I think there was a period for me, like at least 2 years of just being really unsettled. Things aren't clicking like they used to because I have put that in a box and I'm listening to external voices. And then I decided to pull that out, and now I'm all about, like, my compass is my intuition. It's always right. It's this voice inside of me that's saying, go here, go there. I think when you get very still, you can hear it even more. But for sure, what an interesting, I feel like we go through a cycle. We all go through a cycle, especially when you're growing.
Exactly. The other thing I would say is, if I would do the whole startup again, I would definitely try my best to find a co-founder. I would have loved to have one at the outset, but I just couldn't. At the time, there wasn't anyone who felt like, they were the right person. But I think that if you ever, get into startup, and if you can find a co-founder where you have the right chemistry, where you trust each other, and where you have complementary skills, ideally, then just get a co-founder, because it's a very, very lonely journey. It doesn't matter how good and, lovely your team is. Nobody carries the weight like the founder. And so if there are two of you, I am sure the journey would be so much easier, on two versus one. But of course, it's like a marriage, right? So you really have to pick the right person, to kind of be with in this journey. But that's something I would definitely consider if I do it again.
Did you feel like what you were doing was redundant considering brands were already creating Modist lines? Or did you feel like absolutely not, we were the number one platform and our numbers, like our sales showed that it was working?
No, it's absolutely the latter, without question. And without even getting into the numbers, I'll tell you why. First of all, almost every brand that exists has some, options for modest women. So every brand will have a long sleeve shirt and every brand is going to have a maxi skirt or a pair of pants. That was never the issue or the problem that we were trying to solve in the Modist. What we were trying to solve is we were trying to take out everything that was not relevant to this woman and only give her what was relevant. So her actual problem is the amount of time and the frustration she had to go through, sifting through everything that doesn't apply to her, that is not relevant to her, and having to pick those pieces from different brands. So if you've got a brand or if you've got a retailer who's got, 20 or 30% options for modesty thrown into everything else that they have for other women, we're still talking about the same thing. It's a woman who has to go through maybe 20 pieces to find two that work for her. What we did at the Modist is we took out everything that is not relevant. There are no strapless dresses, there are no mini skirts. Everything under this platform speaks to you. And not only in terms of the actual pieces that we offer, but also in terms of style inspiration, in terms of the content that is relevant to you, in terms of editorials that you see that inspire you, in terms of the values of, you're a woman who's made a certain choice in your life and you should celebrate that choice. And we're here celebrating it for you, where modesty is so diverse, where modesty is, we're breaking stereotypes around modesty, that it's cool and fashionable and elegant and is not dowdy and is not religious necessarily or only religious. So you're going into a destination that gives you everything that you need and takes out everything that is not relevant to you. So it's really not comparable to putting a filter in a multi-brand store or to having a few options that are modest.
The Business of Fashion listed you as one of their leaders. Forbes mentioned you as well. How did it feel to be recognized by these and validated by these international publications and to shoulder with some of the most incredible people in business as well?
It was amazing, of course, but I used to have an issue which I started dealing with later, which was I used to seldom celebrate these things. So I remember the day when the head of our marketing and PR called me to tell me that I was chosen as one of the BOF 500. I had a board meeting the day after I was in Paris, and literally I picked up the phone and she said, and she was screaming, and I'm like, that's great. I'm just like in the middle of preparing my board pack and, panicking about that, and she's like, you know what, you need to take 5 minutes and you need to celebrate this and you need to enjoy it. So I've learned actually to kind of celebrate more those highlights, but at the time, I feel that I was too consumed with everything that was happening. But of course, it's an honor because they were such amazing platforms and a great community of people within it. So I feel very honored, of course.
When I was watching some of your interviews, I really felt like there are moments where I feel you're introverted, and then there are moments where I feel like you're extroverted. And I just wanted to know if you're a combination of both.
I'm an ambivert. So I am a mix of an introvert and an extrovert. I can speak in public and I love speaking to people and socializing, but to a certain point. And then I need my own space and being on my own. And I treasure my alone time. So it's a mix of two. I get energy out of being with people, but I also need to restore energy by being on my own. So it's a mix of both.
What was your biggest high?
There were actually quite a few, I have to say. I think that there are many startups that, open and that, set out to do things, but the Modist was very special, truly, because of, I think, the idea, because of the values, because of the community that was behind it. So the moment we launched was an amazing high, because a lot of media started talking about, the Modist. We had people call us and congratulate us. I mean, I had some people who were role models in my life who reached out and said, the brand looks incredible, this is amazing. And these are, people who were virtual, like, role models to me. So that was a high. The time when Fast Company selected us as one of the most innovative companies in the world was a high for us. And you know what? I know that this might come across as a little bit ironic, but when we had to close the business and we announced it, it wasn't a high, but the outpouring of love that we received, the messages from the community of people, of women, whether it's on social media or direct messages, or it was just out of this world. I don't think any of us had expected that our community had that kind of emotional connection to the brand. You could shut a business and kind of just be on your own, grieving it and mourning that business. But what happened with us is that we had thousands and thousands of people literally, write the most touching messages around how much they loved the Modist. So that also was, I would call it, very memorable, as a moment.
I love that you've transitioned into this. You beat me to my next question, which is the moment that post went up on Instagram. I think everyone's heart broke a little. I know mine did, because we were watching what you were doing. We were following the progress of the Modist. You were an exceptional female, self-made business owner. And then the message happened, and it came at a time where, COVID happened as well. So it was all just like the intersection of the pandemic and the closure was really, I think it touched and shocked everybody. It was the first business, like we were hearing things are going to shut down. And then we saw at least I saw your message first as one of the first companies. Getting affected before COVID, or was COVID the breaking point? And how did it feel to put that message? I know you said that you got the outpouring of love, but even before the outpouring of love, like putting out a public statement, how did that feel for you?
Yeah. I mean, I can't get so much into the detail of what happened, but what I can definitely say is that it was not expected, because there was a certain plan, but because of COVID, the plan changed, and it changed very quickly. So we had to act very quickly, and there couldn't have been anything else that we could have done that we hadn't tried to do in order to save the business. So when we got to that decision, it was just, we'd exhausted the potential solutions, and that was the only thing we could have done. And so, of course, there's a certain process. There was a board meeting where we came to the decision, and then there was a communication with my team, and then on the post was put up. I mean, look, it's probably one of the heaviest days in my career, but that was the one day of just dealing with it emotionally. I don't know if it's easier to actually do it where your startup is low-key and no one cares, or when you get so much love, because it also makes you that much more emotional when you see how much people loved it. I mean, when people tell you that it affected their lives, and when young girls send you messages saying that, it made me feel cool again, and I felt like someone understood me and was speaking my language and represented me beautifully, it's very touching. It really meant so much more than being a store to people. It was such it was a brand that they connected with, truly. So anyway, I mean, of course there is a grieving period, but then I'm a firm believer that one has to look forward in life, and that if you do everything in trying to do the right thing and resolve an issue, and it doesn't materialize, then you're just bound to move forward and to do and maybe there are better things in the horizon for you. And I'm a very, very positive person to a fault, so I'm so into, once I've honored my emotions and I've done that and I've had my moment, I like to just look forward and take all the learnings, see how best to, use that experience. So yeah, I mean, it's not easy for anyone. It doesn't matter what kind of business you've started. You put so much effort and passion and love and heart into it. It's always very difficult to kind of not see it materialize to where you wanted it to. But, when you're a founder, you start a business knowing that it might do well, it might fail. And at one point you have to be very rational about it and matter of fact.
I want to thank you for being vulnerable with us. It's easier to talk about the high highs and it's very hard to talk about the low lows. And I feel you because it's like you're grieving for something you've lost. Thank you for being brave and sharing the story. Where are you now in your mindset and what are you interested about next or categories?
I think what I can tell you is that just having started the business and the learnings and all of that, I know that, it has to be very likely it's going to be another startup. I don't see myself doing something that I'm not truly passionate about. So there are a lot of values that I uphold. And so I'd love to integrate those in, whatever business that I would be starting. Do I have a clear idea 100%? No, I do have, thoughts. We all have thoughts all the time on, things that are interesting. And I think life presents us, and this is how I started the Modist, life presents us with problems all the time. And I always find it very fascinating how, a lot of these problems can be amazing business ideas. That's how the Modist started. So let's see, as you said correctly, I'm still unwinding the Modist. I mean, the process of closing a business is a lengthy one, but I'm definitely thinking about, what's next. And inshallah, when it's the right time, by the way, I'm very known to be extremely private. The Modist was not known. Nobody knew anything about it until the launch date. We had a teaser probably, I think, a week or 10 days before launching, and then it was launched. Everybody who worked on it had to sign a strict NDA and not even talk about what it is they were doing. So I just really believe in cooking things, until they get to that right space when it's ready to kind of present them. But let's see. I'm always excited and optimistic about, what's to come.
Working on a level with a company that raised millions of dollars in funding, would you take that route again, or would you rather growing something a lot more organically?
I don't have a particular preference, to be honest, Wafa, because I don't think that raising a lot of funds is right or wrong, or doing things organically is right or wrong. Doing or launching the Modist and growing it to the scale that we grew it and raising the funds that we raised was a deliberate strategic decision. It could have been done over a period of 10 years, and it could have been done the way we've done it over a period of 3 years. It really, I don't believe, has anything to do with its closure or anything. It's just a strategic decision. Do you want to be aggressive because you see a clear, open opportunity in the market and you want to seize it at in a certain period of time? Or do you want to just, be slow about it and just do it on your own? So I don't have any particular view as to whether what I do next is going to raise a lot of funds and have investors versus be done organically. It really would depend around the idea itself and where I see it over a period of time. I think that there's no right and wrong when it comes to this. It's a preference.
Is understanding finance essential to raise the funds that you did and understanding how money works and that space? Is that essential, or actually you're fine with a great CFO and a couple of good advisors?
It helps you quite a bit if you understand numbers of your business, right? So that's I think very important. And I think even if you're not a founder with a finance background, you can still understand all your numbers and understand how things work, and you have to. But it doesn't mean that you understand every single part of it. You can have, team members with you who are more on the financial and analytical side of things. And you as a founder can play a role that is maybe more creative or maybe more, whatever your skill sets are. It does help, but it doesn't mean that you can't start a business if you don't have.
When I talk to you, Ghizlan, and this is my last question, so we're wrapping up with this and I'm really excited. So my question to you is, what would your advice be to women to get them to get behind themselves?
Look, Wafa, I agree, but I also want to tell you that none of us okay, sits with no insecurities and no moments where you feel emotional and no moments where you feel like a wreck and you don't have it all together. And, you know, we all go through this. We're human beings, you know. I have days where I feel like, what am I even doing, you know? But for the most part, I know what I want to do, and it's more about being optimistic and positive, but it's also about working every single day for these emotions and these beliefs to be in you. You know, you can't just go with the flow and not do anything in life and let life happen to you and then expect to be quite strong as a person and have, you know, self-confidence. Whether it's, you know, small habits like you meditate in the morning and you journal and you read things that, you know, help you understand more how to run businesses and, you know, learn, or whether you do certain classes online, or whether you talk and surround yourself with people who are doing things that excite you, or having mentors. It's truly around building a life where you've got the building blocks of what it is that can support you mentally and intellectually and emotionally to achieve whatever it is that you want to achieve. So there isn't like one small piece of advice that I, you know, would give someone, except that, you know, working on yourself, you know, 360 degrees. And you don't have to have 3 hours a day to do that, even if it's, you know, an hour a day or a couple of hours on the weekend. But just, you know, do that in a consistent way. And that is what builds character, and that's what builds those beliefs in your mind. But I would also say something is that, you know, I don't believe that confidence is something that I may be wrong, but I don't think that it just happens. You know, it's about trying and testing and failing and getting up again and doing things again. And, you know, if you take an example, public speaking, I posted once saying that I used to be terrified. The first time I ever spoke publicly was a disaster. I mean, I sounded terrible. When I saw myself again in a video, I was cringing, but that was just the first time. And then the second time I was very nervous. And then the third time. And then once you do it 50 times, you may feel nervous, but you kind of are, you know, your subject matter and you know what you're doing. And so it's never like this, you know, it's never at a click of a button. It's always about, we're all work in progress. And one thing I would say is we all have fear in everything. You know, when we're starting something new, we all feel scared. We all don't know, you know, everything about it. But the point is to do the most that you can in terms of understanding what it is that you're going to do and just going for it. The learning and the confidence just get built with time.
This has been incredible. Thank you for giving me your time, being vulnerable, sharing some of the stories, like your first job, which you've never shared maybe on an interview with us. I really feel that through vulnerability and through storytelling, we can help women be their best selves. And I think getting strong, powerful women who are authentic to speak their truth gets us to move just a bit closer to being more authentic ourselves and to reach our highest potentials. But really, this was wonderful.
Thank you. And congratulations on an amazing podcast and on your questions. I mean, I honestly felt it was a conversation, not an interview, not a podcast. So do more of this because we all need it. I myself, you know, need to hear stories of other women and how they do what they do. And, you know, there's learning in this for all of us.
That's it for this week. Thank you for listening to an episode of the Woman Power Podcast. And thank you for downloading and streaming our podcast every week. If you love what you've heard, tag us on Instagram and follow the Woman Power Podcast and Woman Power Summit account for more information on our next episode. Please leave a rating review wherever you get your podcast. It really helps other women discover the show. That's it from me. See you next week.